Good day, dear students. In today's class, we will be continuing with the play Mother's Day that we had started in yesterday's class. So far, we have seen that this is a play about the Pearson family, and the Pearson family consists of the mother, that is Annie Pearson, father George Pearson, and their two children, Cyril Pearson the son, and Doris Pearson the daughter. And they live in a semi-detached villa somewhere in England, and they have a neighbor. They have a neighbor named Mrs. Fitzgerald, and Mrs. Fitzgerald is a woman uh, in her 50s or 60s, and she's a very confident, very robust, very open-minded sort of a woman. She doesn't believe in mincing her words, and she says things the way they are. Okay, she's very much opposite to Mrs. Pearson, Mrs. Annie Pearson, who is very mild and very submissive and very, very polite and unsure of herself. All right. The story so far is that Mrs. Pearson and Mrs. Fitzgerald are having a chat, and they're talking about how Mrs. Pearson's family always mistreats her, in the sense that Mrs. Pearson is a homemaker, a housewife, and that is the reason why her entire family believes that it is her duty to look after all of their needs. So everything from making their beds to ironing their clothes to washing their clothes to preparing their meals, providing them whatever that they need, it is her responsibility. So what happens is that although she's the mother of that house and the wife of that house, she is actually treated like an unpaid servant, and this has become a cause for concern both for Mrs. Pearson, who goes through all of the difficulty, as well as for Mrs. Fitzgerald, her friend, who feels very sorry for her, and she feels that this situation is completely not fair. That so much of work needs to be done by Mrs. Pearson, and she gets no recognition for it whatsoever. Okay, so now they come up with a plan, and here we are also told that Mrs. Fitzgerald knew some magic that she had learned out in the East, and now they decide to use a chant, and after the chant, the spirits or the personalities of the two persons exchange bodies, so that Mrs. Pearson's personality is now in Mrs. Fitzgerald's body, and Mrs. Fitzgerald's personality is now in Mrs. Pearson's body. All right, so we had stopped right there yesterday. It was somewhere around here, and now we know that on the outside the person looks like Mrs. Pearson, Mrs. Annie Pearson, but on the inside you have the character of Mrs. Fitzgerald. So the strong, the confident woman that Mrs. Fitzgerald is now in the body of Mrs. Pearson. Okay, so what happens, or the fun that's going to happen as a result of this exchange of personalities and spirits, is what we're going to be looking at today. Right, so I'll take it from here. It says, Mrs. Pearson, who is now with Mrs. Fitzgerald's personality, she says, "See what I mean, dear?" She notices the cigarette. "Here, you don't want that." She snatches it and puts it in her own mouth, puffing contentedly. So remember, Mrs. Fitzgerald has the habit of smoking and drinking. So now that the personalities have been exchanged, the cigarette is still in the hand of the body of Mrs. Fitzgerald. Okay, so but obviously the spirit is of Mrs. Pearson, right? So we are told that Mrs. Pearson, the body of Mrs. Pearson, now takes the cigarette in her own hand, and it is quite odd because Mrs. Pearson doesn't really smoke. The real Mrs. Pearson doesn't smoke or drink unless there is an occasion for it. So anyway, Mrs. Pearson, that is the real Mrs. Fitzgerald, now takes the cigarette and she is puffing it contentedly, very happily. Mrs. Fitzgerald, now with Mrs. Pearson's personality, looks down at herself and sees that her body has changed and gives a scream of fright. So this is the real Mrs. Pearson. Now that she sees that the chant has worked and she is now in the body of Mrs. Fitzgerald, she is extremely shocked and she says, "Okay, what is this? Now, how can we undo this? Because what has just happened?" She never thought a spell would work, right? So Mrs. Fitzgerald says, with Mrs. Pearson's personality, "Oh, it has happened. Like she can't believe it has actually worked." And Mrs. Pearson, very complacently, very coolly, she says, "Of course it's happened. Very neat. Didn't know I had it in me." So she's very proud that she still has her ability to do magic. So she says, "Of course. What I was not telling you lies. I obviously know magic, and see, I still have the skills in me." Mrs. Fitzgerald alarmed. She says, "But whatever shall I do, Mrs. Fitzgerald? George and the children can't see me like this." Mrs. Pearson very grimly, she says, "They aren't going to. That's the point. They'll have to deal with only they'll have me to deal with, only they won't know it." So you know what she's talking about. She says, "See, nobody will know, only you and I know that our spirits have been exchanged, but to everybody else who looks at us, they still believe that I am Mrs. Pearson and you are Mrs. Fitzgerald. They don't know that it's actually me, Mrs. Fitzgerald, in the body of Mrs. Pearson. So don't worry, we just need to act out accordingly. Nobody will even know that this trick was worked out and our spirits have now been exchanged." Sorry about that noise. Anyway, let's continue. Mrs. Fitzgerald is still, that is the real Mrs. Pearson, she's still alarmed. She's still quite shocked. She says, "But what if we can't change back? It would be terrible." He says, "Okay, fine. You want to teach them a lesson, and fine. You want this day. Okay, we exchange spirits. But what if we never are able to exchange back? What if the spell doesn't work again?" She's already overthinking the situation. And Mrs. Pearson, the real Mrs. Fitzgerald, she calms her down. She says, "Here, steady, Mrs. Pearson. If you had to live my life, it wouldn't be so bad. You'd have more fun as me than you've had as you." So she says, "Don't worry. Even if the spell doesn't work and we are forever stuck in each other's bodies, don't worry. You will have a lot more fun in my body than you've had so far. So it's not such a bad thing. So stop overthinking." Okay. But obviously, Mrs. Fitzgerald, that is the real Mrs. Pearson, she says, "Yes, but I don't want to be anybody else." Mrs. Pearson says, "Now stop worrying. It's easier changing back. I can do it anytime we want." So Mrs. Fitzgerald says, "Well, do it now. I don't want it. I've seen that your trick works and everything, but please, I want to go back to my own body." But the real Mrs. Fitzgerald, now in Mrs. Pearson's body, she says, "Not lightly. I've got to deal with your family first. That's the idea, isn't it? Didn't know how to begin with them, you said? Well, I'll show you." Mrs. Fitzgerald says, "But what am I going to do?" Mrs. Pearson says, "Go into my house for a bit. There's nobody there. Then pop back and see how we're doing. You ought to enjoy it. Better get off now before one of them comes." So Mrs. Fitzgerald, nervously rising, she says, "Yes, I suppose that's best. You're sure it'll be all right?" Mrs. Pearson chuckling, so she's already laughing. She says, "It'll be wonderful. Now off you go, dear." Okay, so finally, the real Mrs. Fitzgerald has been successful in convincing the real Mrs. Pearson that the situation will be under control. Whatever they're doing is very much necessary, and there's only good that is going to come out of the little magic trick that they have used. So she convinces her that the situation will be fine, and she tells her before anybody sees her there, she should go out. Okay, so that nobody doubts that there was something that happened between the two women. Okay, so now Mrs. Pearson is sitting down in her own house, rather in the real Mrs. Pearson's house. But we all know that she's not the real Mrs. Pearson. Only the body of the real Mrs. Pearson is there, but it is the spirit or the personality of the real Mrs. Fitzgerald. So now is where the fun begins. So we are told Mrs. Fitzgerald crosses and hurries out through the door right, left to herself. I'll read that again. Mrs. Fitzgerald crosses and hurries out through the door right. Left to herself, Mrs. Pearson smokes away, lighting another cigarette, and begins laying out the cards for patients on the table. Okay, so this is actually the real Mrs. Fitzgerald. So she continues smoking and she has her cards with her. So she lays down the cards and she's doing something with it. After a few moments, Doris Pearson comes bursting in left. She's a pretty girl in her early 20s who would be pleasant enough if she had not been spoiled. Okay, so if you remember, Doris Pearson is the daughter of Mrs. Annie Pearson, and we are told here that she's quite old. In a sense, she's not a young girl anymore. She's in her early 20s and she's working and everything, and she looks very pretty. But at the same time, she has a very unpleasant personality, and it's more because she has been pampered. She has not been corrected by her mother and her father. Okay. Then Doris, she says, before she has taken anything in, so before she even looks around and sees what her mother's doing, she says, Mom, you'll have to iron my yellow silk. I must wear it tonight. She now sees what is happening and is astounded. And what she sees happening is that Mrs. Pearson is smoking, right? Because first she just enters in the house and she tells her mother, I want to wear the yellow silk tonight. Please iron it. Actually, she doesn't even use the word please. She just says, you have to iron it. Okay. And then when she really looks at her mother, so-called mother, she says, what are you doing? She moves down left center. So she goes to her mother because the mother's smoking. Mrs. Pearson now uses her ordinary voice, but her manner is not fluttering and apologetic, but cool and incisive. Okay, so Mrs. Pearson, she has altered her voice a little bit. She doesn't try to sound like Mrs. Fitzgerald. She just changed her voice so that she sounds more like Mrs. Pearson. But her behavior, the way she carries herself, it is not the same as the way Mrs. Pearson carries herself. Because Mrs. Pearson, we have seen, she's very low on self-esteem. She's very apologetic all the time, very unsure. But this Mrs. Pearson, that is the real Mrs. Fitzgerald, is very confident here. She's not fluttering, she's not shaking or anything like that. Very cool and incisive. She knows what she's doing. That's the kind of the manner in which she carries herself. And Mrs. Pearson, not even looking up, she says, what do you think I'm doing? Whitewashing the ceiling? So when Doris Pearson is asking her so-called mother, what are you doing? So this one doesn't keep quiet. The real Mrs. Fitzgerald, she says, what do you think I'm doing? I'm whitewashing the ceiling. You can't see what I'm doing. You've got eyes, right? Doris still astounded. So Doris is even more shocked because first of all, her mother is smoking and she's not in the kitchen. And now she's being very rude. Okay. So she's even more shocked. And so she says, but you're smoking. You never do that otherwise. Mrs. Pearson says, that's right, dear. No law against it, is there? So she says, I'm not doing any criminal activity, right? It's okay to smoke. So what's the big deal? Why are you so surprised? Doris says, but I thought you didn't smoke. And Mrs. Pearson says, then you thought wrong. And Doris says, are we having tea in the kitchen? Mrs. Pearson says, have it where you like, dear. Doris says very angrily, do you mean it isn't ready? Mrs. Pearson says, yours isn't. I've had all I want. Might go out later and get a square meal at the Clarendon. And Doris, hardly believing her ears, she says, who might? Might go out. So she's saying, who might go out? And Mrs. Pearson says, I might. Who do you think? Why would I be talking about someone else? I'm talking about me going out to Clarendon and getting a meal. And then Doris cannot make sense of anything. First, the tea is not ready. Second, her mother's smoking. And now her mother's telling her very coolly that she doesn't intend to make any tea for Doris. And she might go out and have a meal instead of cooking it at home. Okay, so Doris cannot process all of this information because it's very, very strange and it has never happened before. And Mrs. Pearson says, Doris says, she's staring at her mother and she says, Mom, what's the matter with you? And Mrs. Pearson says, don't be silly. Doris very indignantly, she says, she says, it's not me that's being silly. And I must say it's a bit much when I've been working hard all day and you can't even bother to get my tea ready. Did you hear what I said about my yellow silk? And Mrs. Pearson, obviously, remember, it's Mrs. Fitzgerald. She stands for no nonsense. And especially when someone orders her around, she's not going to keep quiet about it. So she says, no. So I've not heard, she says, So what is it? Were you trying to tell me? Don't you like it now? I never did, So it's interesting to see how Mrs. Fitzgerald twists the context in such a way that it becomes a joke and it becomes a mockery to Doris. Okay, so obviously she had heard about the yellow silk and that Doris had commanded her mother to iron the yellow silk, but she's not going to listen to it. So she says, I did not hear what you said. Did you say you didn't like it? And she says, good, you don't like it, because I never liked it, So she's insulting her. And Doris, very indignantly, she says, of course I like it, and I'm going to wear it tonight. So I want it ironed. Mrs. Pearson says, want it ironed? What do you think it's going to do? Iron itself? Uh, Obviously, you know what she's talking about. Doris is trying to say she wants Mrs. Pearson to iron her yellow silk dress for her. But Mrs. Pearson is making it very clear that that is not her duty. It is not her dress, so she should not be ironing it. It is Doris's dress, so Doris herself must be ironing it. So she says, who do you think is going to iron it? The dress is going to iron itself? And Doris says, no, you're going to iron it for me. You always do. She says, you always iron my clothes. So why are you acting strangely today? Today also you are going to iron it. Why are you talking like this? Okay, again I scrolled. Yeah, so Mrs. Pearson says, well, this time I don't. And don't talk rubbish to me about working hard. I have a good idea how much you do, Doris Pearson. I put in twice the hours you do and get no wages, no thanks for it. Why are you going to wear your yellow silk? Where are you going? And Doris, in a very sulky manner, she says, out with Charlie Spence. So she's very upset already that they have this sort of an argument going on. So she says, I'm going out with Charlie Spence. Charlie Spence is her boyfriend. So Mrs. Pearson says, why? And Doris says, very wildly, very angrily, she says, why? Why? What's the matter with you? Why shouldn't I go with Charlie Spence if he asks me and I want to? Any objections? Go on, you might as well tell me. So she's already heated up about something else, and now that her so-called mother is asking her why you're going out with Charlie Spence, the boy that she likes, she says, what is your problem? I want to go out with Charlie Spence, so I want to go. Why are you asking me about it? You have any objection? Just tell me that. And Mrs. Pearson doesn't hold back. She says very civilly, can't you find anybody better? I wouldn't be seen dead with Charlie Spence, buck teeth and half-witted. And this, I can tell you, is a major insult. Charlie Spence is the boy that Doris Pearson likes, and here is Mrs. Fitzgerald in the body of Mrs. Pearson, openly insulting Doris's choice. He says that Charlie Spence that you're going out with, he doesn't even look good and he's not even intelligent enough. Buck teeth, it's just trying to say that he looks very funny, and half-witted means he's not smart at all. So just if I were in your place, I would not be seen dead with him, because he is such poor standard that I would never ever go out with him. Okay, and Doris obviously likes the boy, so she says he isn't, and she can't even complete her sentence. And Mrs. Pearson says, when I was your age, I would have found somebody better than Charlie Spence or given myself up as a bad job. So this is another major burn here. So she says, I could have done so much better than you. And when I was your age, I would have either found myself a boy much better than Charlie Spence, or I would have just given up, saying that I am not good enough. But I would never have dated a boy like Charlie Spence. He's such poor standard. He's, he's just not a very good boy. He doesn't have the looks, neither does he have the intelligence. And Doris cannot take it anymore because she really likes this guy, and here is her mother insulting her choice, right? So Doris says, she's nearly in tears, she's almost crying. She says, oh, shut up, just keep quiet, I've had enough of you. First you're not making the tea, then you're not ironing my silk, then you're smoking there, and now you're even judging my choices, my choice of a boy that I like, and obviously Mrs. Pearson, that is the real Mrs. Fitzgerald, is enjoying it to her fullest. Now I missed one point, or rather I have not really focused on it, but I want to go back to this one paragraph where Mrs. Pearson says, this is because Doris says it's not fair. She says, I have come back from work and I've had a very hard day at work because I work almost it comes later on. She says, I work almost 8 hours each day, so the only thing I want from you is to give me something to eat, and since it's tea time, I want you to make some tea for me, and it's not fair that you're sitting down there saying that I have not made any tea. And here Mrs. Pearson says, she says, don't talk rubbish to me about working hard. I have a good idea how much you do, Doris Pearson. I put in twice the hours you do and get no wages and no thanks for it. Okay, now this is the crux of the problem. See, most of the times, and this is not just in the Pearson household, it is everywhere. All households that have mothers that are homemakers or housewives, we believe that just because our mothers are at home and they don't have a job like some of us do, we believe that they don't do any work at home. Okay, that they're relaxed at home, or even if they do work, it's not as bad as the amount of work we've got to do outdoors. But here, Mrs. Pearson or Mrs. Fitzgerald, in the body of Mrs. Pearson, makes it very clear that I do twice as much work as you do. At least the time that I put in is twice as much as the time that you have put in. And I, in return for the amount of work and the amount of time I spend on that work, I get nothing, not even thanks from you, no appreciation, not even money. At least y'all are getting something. Y'all are getting a status, y'all are getting a good salary, y'all are getting some comforts. But what about me? Okay, I'm also doing the work, but y'all take it for granted. So why should I do it? I work in twice as much as you do, and I get nothing for it. So can you explain why should I continue doing this? And that is one of the main points that she puts forward to the children. It will continue. This is one of the first arguments that she puts in to try and regain the position of the real Mrs. Pearson in her household. She's trying to show how bad the situation of Mrs. Pearson is as the housewife of this family. Then we are told that, of course, then they have the entire conversation about Charlie Spence, and then Doris cannot take it anymore, so she runs out left and she's crying. Mrs. Pearson chuckles and begins putting the cards together. And Mrs. Pearson has not even the slightest tinge of guilt or remorse in her. She's enjoying the show, enjoying the spectacle. Finally, after all these years, somebody has corrected that daughter of the Pearson family, and she's very happy about it. So she's laughing and she continues putting her cards. She doesn't even go out to comfort Doris, who she knows is crying. Right? So after a moment, Cyril Pearson enters left. He is the masculine counterpart of Doris. So he is the brother of Doris, and he has come. So let's see what is he like. So Cyril very briskly, very shortly says, "Hello, mom. Tea ready?" So like as if you talk to your servant, right? You don't even ask her how she was or how is her day or anything like that. Directly come to the point. So tea is ready, and not even tea is ready. He just says tea ready. Keywords he uses there. And Mrs. Pearson says no. And Cyril moving to the table annoyed. So he's already angry that the tea is not ready. Like how you would be with your servant. So Cyril says, "Why not?" And Mrs. Pearson very coolly, she says, "I couldn't bother." I don't think that there is any need for me to make tea for you. I'm not interested. It doesn't bother me. And Cyril says, "Feeling off color or something? So are you not feeling well? Is there something the problem?" And Mrs. Pearson very openly, she says, "Never felt better in my life." She says, "Don't worry, my health is completely fine. I have never felt better than I'm feeling today. So just that I don't want to do any work." And Cyril very aggressively, he says, "What's the idea then?" And then Mrs. Pearson says, "Just a change." Then Cyril very briskly again, he says, "Well, snap out of it, ma, and get cracking. Haven't too much time." And here we have, the son is no better than the daughter. But at least he had the decency to ask her whether she was feeling okay or not when he finds that her behavior is a little different. Okay. But at the same time, when he realizes that the mother's fine, he says, "You just stop acting weird and please get cracking." That means keep moving and do my work. What work I had told you to make tea. So go ahead and make tea for me. Okay. I don't have too much of time here. I'm in a hurry. So keep my tea ready. I have to have my tea and I have to go out again. So Cyril is about to go when Mrs. Pearson's voice checks him. So obviously he is asking for trouble, because how dare he speak like that to the real Mrs. Fitzgerald. So she doesn't keep quiet. She says, "I have plenty of time." And Cyril says, "Yes, but I haven't. Got a busy night tonight." Moving left to the row. "Did you put my things out?" So he says, "You may have a lot of time. Good for you, but I don't have a lot of time. So I'm the busy person. You are a housewife. After all, you have a lot of time. Okay, but I have friends, I have to go to the club, I have got to go to my job, so I have a lot of things to do, right? And right now I'm going to go out to meet my friends. It's party time. Okay, so uh, you better keep my tea ready. That's what Cyril says. And then he says, did you put my things out? So he's most probably talking about his clothes. Probably they were washed and they needed to be put out to dry. So he asks her whether the work was done. And Mrs. Pearson very coolly, she says, I can't remember, but I doubt it. She says, I can't remember whether I put it, but I think I didn't. That's what she says. Cyril moving to the table, protesting. Now this time he's angry. Okay, so he moves to the table that she's sitting on, sitting at, and he says, now look. When I asked you this morning, you promised. You said you'd have to look through them first in case there was any mending. Mrs. Pearson says, yes, well, I've decided I don't like mending. Okay, so mending could be any stitching work or any, repair work on the clothes that needed to be put out. Okay, so he says, you had promised me that you will mend the clothes and then you'll put it out to dry or whatever it is. But now you're telling me that you don't even remember whether you've done it. So what is going on with you? So Mrs. Pearson suddenly says, you know what, I've decided that I don't like to mend clothes anymore. So I didn't want to do it. And Cyril says, that's a nice way to talk. What would happen if we all talk like that? And Mrs. Pearson says, you all do talk like that. If there's something at home you don't want to do, you don't do it. If it's something at work, you get the union to bar it. Now, all that's happened is that I've joined the movement. Cyril staggered. He says, I don't get this, Mom. What's going on? And Mrs. Pearson, laconic and sinister, she says, changes, changes are going on. And just to explain to you what's going on in this scene, and another very important point that she makes is Cyril says that, what your behavior right now is not correct. What you're doing is you're saying that you of course as my mother, you have certain duties, and in for today your duty was to mend my clothes and to put it out to dry. Okay, because you promised me, and otherwise also it's you who does that work for me. Okay, and now you're telling me that you suddenly don't like to do that work. Okay, so he says that's not how the world works. We can't simply not do things just because we don't like it. Okay, and Mrs. Pearson checks him right there. That is the real Mrs. Fitzgerald in the body of Mrs. Pearson. She checks him right there. She says, mind you, that's exactly what you all do. When you go out to the office and there are certain things that you all don't want to do, you will get the labor union to bar it, to stop it for you. Okay, that is how you all function. Even when you all come home, if there's anything that you don't want to do, you will not do it. So why are the rules any different for me? If I don't like to do certain things, even I should be allowed the freedom not to do it. Okay, so that's exactly the point that she's trying to explain to Cyril Pearson. And Cyril obviously cannot make sense of it, because he is also not used to his mother talking to him like that, or pointing out how silly their arrangement in the house is, how unfair it is, how unjustified it is. So he says, what's going on? And then the real Mrs. Fitzgerald just says one thing. She says, changes, much required changes are going on in this house. Okay, we will stop right here for today, but what we need to know is that the two children have been confronted. Mrs. Fitzgerald has confronted both of them. Both of them tried to belittle Mrs. Pearson. They tried to show her that she was wrong, to be so cool and uh, uh, not serve them, because it is her duty to serve them. But she checks both of them and she gives them arguments to support her claim to not do anything. And she says to Doris that she works twice as much as her and she doesn't get any reward in return for it. No thanks, no money. And she tells Cyril that just like everybody else, she also has the right to not do a certain amount of work if she doesn't like it, because everybody else gets that privilege. So why not she, the homemaker or the housewife? Okay, so this is it for today. We will stop right here, and in the next class we will see how she tackles the husband, and what is the outcome of it, what's going to happen after everybody has been tackled. Thank you.